In the last stream, we were working on setting up our initial bits of automation with these tier 1 basic miners producing cobblestone, stone, gravel, sand, clay, and grout for us automatically. These miners now passively generate all of those resources, so going forward, we no longer have to use the excavator on our dirt to get these rocks. We don't have to worry about smelting our stone into smooth stone. We also don't have to worry about using our hammer to turn the cobble into gravel or into sand. We just have all of that being made for us automatically. We also set up our first strainer, and we set up our casting controller here with the fuel tank and the solidifier, which is currently allowing us to make gears. The gear that we've been making the most of so far is the coal gear, which was required for all of these basic miners, but looking at the next quest in the quest book here, that being the coke brick, to make this, we have to combine the black bricks that we were using in the last episode to actually make the controller and the solidifier with some of the molten coal to get coke brick. The coke brick here is used to make a multi-block structure called the coke oven from Immersive Engineering, and to build that, we need 27 coke bricks. And so we're going to need to get 27 of these black bricks, and we're going to have to combine that with 27 lots of 80 millibuckets worth of molten coal. Thankfully, you do get exactly 80 millibuckets of molten coal from one charcoal, and so if we have 27 charcoal, which we do, we should be able to throw all of that into here, like this. That's going to slowly go ahead and process down into all of the coal that we're going to need. From there, of course, we need to take our black bricks and get 27 of these. Now, to make that happen, we do need to go ahead and smelt more grout. Thankfully, we do have grout being made for us automatically, and in fact, I think it even mentions in the quest book here that we're going to need a lot of coal and black bricks. Maybe a grout miner would be useful. Indeed, I think it would. We do have 2 blast furnaces over here, and so we should be able to very quickly smelt all of these into black brick, which should allow us to get all of the coke blocks nice and quickly, just so long as we don't turn all of our coal into coal gears. That is not ideal. Instead, we can just throw in our black bricks and, using the charcoal that we had in there, process that into the bricks for the coke oven. While we wait for that, let me get some more charcoal smelting over here, so we have more of that because we are going to need more now that I've made these extra coal gears. And also, whilst we wait for this, we can take a look at crafting up some of these mechanism pipes that we talked about a little bit in the last episode. Specifically, the logistical transporter pipes and the basic mechanical pipes. The logistical transporter pipes here are going to be quite useful because these are going to allow us to move items around our base. So, if we can get 6 lots of regular brick, as well as 3 glass, we should be able to make this happen. We do have some glass here. Unfortunately, things like glass not makeable via a miner. Thankfully, though, we do have enough clay here to make even more brick over here, and of course, we can continue to take our charcoal and craft that down like this and like this. And this is going to allow us to extract items. I think initially we're going to use it to extract from these basic miners, because at the moment, they can only hold a stack of items, which means once they fill up, they just stop generating altogether. Right now, we don't have access to storage drawers. We do have to unlock those via the drawer blueprint once we have some basic technium. And so initially here, we are going to have to use just regular old chests to store all of our items. But I think that should be fine. If I grab 6 chests, I'm going to put 1 down above each miner, like right about here, and I'll probably move these torches kind of up to the top to make sure the base is still bright enough to see what's going on. And then once we have the logistical transporters, we can begin to use those to extract from the top of these miners into these chests so that we can begin to build up a nice backlog of all of these resources so that we have it when we need it. So once we have those extra bricks, we can craft up our first 16 basic logistical transporters, and the recipe for the configurator here is just 2 sticks with 3 smooth stone. Nice. So here, what we can do is we can place down the logistical transporter, and then using the configurator, we can shift right-click on the side that connects to the basic miner. If you do that, it sets it to push by default. We want to do it one more time to set it to pull, and now it's going to pull items out of this basic miner up and into the chest. Nice. Now, it's at this point that I realize I probably should have made these barrels and not chests, because I actually can't open this chest with the wooden scaffolding above it. So real quick, let me grab 6 barrels instead of 6 chests, and at the same time, we'll also go ahead and throw down the basic logistical transporters onto all of these, and then set all of those to extract so that we can backlog all of these resources. Once we've replaced all of these with barrels, we can then, of course, go ahead and double shift right click on all of these to begin extracting all of these resources. Nice. Now that that is done, let's head back over here and see if we don't have enough of these black bricks to make our coke oven. Not quite. We're at 22 here out of the 27 that we're going to need. Thankfully, we do have even more grout at the end here, and smelting that up should get us all of the coke brick that we're going to need. Once we have the coke brick, we are also going to have to get an engineer's hammer here to actually form the multi-block. For that, it looks like, thankfully, we're just going to require a few more compressed cobblestone, 6 more in total, so we can make 2 more of these stone hammers. 1 and 2. And then from there, it is just regular stone rods, which we can make with our smooth stone. Nice. Let's throw you in here and you in here. And not too long later, we now have the 27 coke bricks required, and so we should be able to place this coke oven down. We'll probably end up moving this fairly soon, but for now, let's throw it down like this. It's just a 3x3x3 cube of coke brick that you then right-click the center of with the hammer. That then forms the coke oven, and this can now be used to make us creosote, which I believe is the resource that we actually want here. It can also be used to make coal coke as well, if we want that in the not-so-distant future. So treated wooden planks here, and there's the coal coke as well. Treated wooden planks are made by combining wood with creosote, and we need those treated wooden planks, as we saw in the last episode, because they're a key ingredient for making basic technium. Now, the good news for us is that in the coke oven, we can either place some coal if we want to make coal coke, but we can also place regular logs if we want to make charcoal. So if we take some of the dark oak logs coming out of our cloche and we place those into the coke oven, that is going to very slowly but surely turn those logs into charcoal, which we can then use as a fuel, but as a byproduct, we're also going to get the creosote here, which we can use to make treated wood. Now, I believe it even mentions in the quest book that the cloche by default produces 2 logs every 1200 ticks, and a coke oven smelts 1 log into charcoal every 600 ticks. And so it turns out that having just 1 cloche running and pumping all of its wares into the coke oven will produce exactly the right number of logs to run the coke oven indefinitely, which is pretty nifty. We would run into a slight problem. I think that slight problem is that we would back up on some of the other resources, like the sticks, the apples, and the dark oak saplings, but I think that's fine, because I think that the coke oven can actually only accept the items that it can melt. I think if I was to try and put apples in here, they just wouldn't go in, and so I don't think there's any chance of the wrong item making its way into the coke oven. The only problem we would run into is eventually if this fills up with excess items like sticks, apples, and saplings, then it's going to stop working, which is not ideal. But ideally, before we get to that point, we can look at piping the sticks, the apples, and the saplings out into their own containers to use elsewhere. Now, I do think it is probably going to be in our best interest to make a second cloche as opposed to reusing the first one, especially given that they don't require power and they're also fairly easy to make. For that, we are going to require some more wood. I'll grab all of these, and I will make quite a few wooden gears here. I have been slowly smelting up even more cobblestone into smooth stone over here, so it also shouldn't be too difficult for us to make even more of the stone gears as well. I continually forget that they do require regular stone as well as smooth stone. Thankfully, again, that is already coming in automatically. Let's make 5 of those, and then let's see if we can't make a few, maybe, of the simple machine frames. I'll make 3, and boom, we got another cloche. Nice. So I'm going to put that down, let's say, right about here for now. In here, we do have to throw down 1 more piece of dirt, which we do still have, along with 1 of our many, many saplings that we are producing in here. So that is going to start producing the logs for us, and all we need to do is extract from here using the logistical transporter and the configurator, set that to extract, and now I believe as soon as that produces a log, it should pump that log around into the coke oven, and that is kind of indefinitely going to produce the charcoal and the creosote that we need. Now, from there, we of course need to pump that creosote into a solidifier. I'm going to leave this solidifier here. I do think it's going to be in our best interest to make another solidifier specifically for the creation of treated wooden planks, because we need to automate the production of these treated wooden planks to automate the production of technium. So we might as well do that sooner rather than later. To do that, of course, we need even more of this grout. We need to smelt that down. So let me take all of this. It's really not coming in as fast as I would like. We can apparently make these miners faster by crafting up one of the machine frames, specifically this sturdy machine frame. You'll see if I hover over it and press shift, it modifies the way custom machinery works. And you'll see the first modifier there says negative 20% requirement custom machinery speed. And so apparently if I make one of these, we can place that into the miner and that modifies it to be slightly faster than it currently is. So if I do this, this is now ever so slightly faster than all of the other miners. While we wait for even more of those black bricks, I do want to look at getting a basic fluid tank here. For that, we need some glass, which I have just smelted. We can craft that into a strainer tank. And then from there, if we get 3 strainer tanks, I'll make 2 more of these, we can make our first basic fluid tank. So if I were to do this, I need 6 of these and then 1 of these. With the solidifier, I think we can just put this down right about here. In order to extract the creosote oil, we are going to have to make the mechanical pipes, which are the other pipes from mechanism. These, again, thankfully fairly straightforward. They do require just a tiny bit more glass. Thankfully, we're backing up on sand over in our sand chest. Boom and boom. That's going to very quickly get us the sand that we need. And other than that, we just need smooth stone, which we also have. And so we'll take those. We'll do something like this. And now we can do the exact same thing that we've been doing with the item pipes. We can go ahead, shift right click here twice. That's going to extract the creosote round into the solidifier. And now, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that we can take dark oak logs and place those directly into the solidifier, like so. And that is going to begin to turn those dark oak logs into treated wooden planks. You can do this with planks as well. You can put 1 plank in that will use 1/4 as much creosote and make 1/4 as many treated wooden planks. The only downside to using planks is that it's more difficult to automate, especially at this stage of the pack, because of course, much like we've just done for the coke oven here, we can set up another cloche over on this side that automatically pumps logs directly into the solidifier to fully automate the production of treated wood. So now I believe we can start looking at this basic Technium questline. This starts with the rock washer. It says the rock washer can be used to find copper ore pieces inside of cobblestone. Copper ore can also be turned into copper ore pieces. So for this, we need another one of those sturdy machine frames, a chest, 6 treated wood, and then a basic fluid tank. I'm probably going to go ahead and use the basic fluid tank we have. I'm also probably going to steal this sturdy machine frame out from our grout miner, at least temporarily. That should make it incredibly easy for us to make our first rock washer. The rock washer here, much like the other machines, doesn't require power. It does require, however, some water. And so I think what we are going to have to do is extract from the ambient water collector into the rock washer, like so. And then from there, we have to put our cobblestone from here directly into that rock washer. And that is going to begin to wash the cobblestone into copper ore pieces. There is only a 25% chance. We got pretty lucky on the first go there, and we did get 1 copper ore piece. Once we have 4 of those copper ore pieces, we can craft that into a raw copper that we can then smelt, of course, into a copper ingot. What we should probably do is we should probably get another one of these ambient water collectors, because I think it's going to make a lot of sense to put this over here and have the cobblestone automatically pumped into the rock washer so that we can automatically generate these copper ore pieces. And you'll see that pretty soon we're also going to get the compactor that's going to allow us to automatically compact those copper ore pieces into raw copper so that we don't have to manually do the crafting like this. Now, unfortunately, it would appear that we can't smelt this in a regular or blast furnace. Instead, we have to use the solidifier to first melt the copper into molten copper, and then we're going to need an ingot mold if we want to turn it into a copper ingot. Thankfully, the ingot mold is pretty straightforward. It's just 5 of those black ingots, and over here, we can do this and we can do this, as long as we have enough fuel, and especially if we have the right temperature of fuel. That's a big if, because as you'll see here, it does say that it requires a hotter fluid, such as lava or molten coal. Now, further back here, there is a quest for a cobblestone melter. The cobblestone melter here is going to allow us to melt cobblestone into lava. For that, we do actually need to get some coal coke. Over here, you'll see this is working, by the way. We are pumping endless wood into the coke oven here, which is very nice indeed. For now, though, I'm going to have to swap that out for at least one coal coke, at least 2 coal cokes, so that we can make the cobblestone miner. That's going to allow us to make the lava, which is then going to allow us to smelt the copper. Once that coal coke is done, we can bring it over to our crafting table, and as long as we have enough black bricks here to make 6 of these black bricks, we can go ahead and make our cobblestone melter. Nice. So what I will probably do here, actually, is extract the cobblestone using our logistical transporter into the cobblestone melter. I am kind of hopeful that the cobblestone melter here doesn't require power either, and that it just passively generates lava. It totally does. And then I guess we'll probably end up extracting from here down into a tank at some point. So I'll place down a basic mechanical pipe, and then eventually we'll have a tank here that's going to hopefully passively fill up with lava. Before then, though, we can probably go ahead and I'm assuming if I break and replace this, that retains its inventory. Interesting. The good news is that the fuel tanks are a little bit cheaper than the rest of the structures, and so we do only need to get 8 brick, I believe, with 1 glass to make another fuel tank. So if we do something like this and like this, we can set U to extract. Once that's extracted, we can pick up the tank and swap it out over here. Nice. At which point we should finally be able to melt the raw copper, and then over here, once it moves in with the ingot mold, it should turn into an ingot. Now, I actually don't know how this works with having multiple fluids, because currently we only have the one solidifier, and currently it only has molten coal inside of it. So I do wonder if there's a way to swap that out. Chat is right, though, that we were told in the last episode about the fluid mover, which I'm assuming, can use to move fluids. We just need to get 5 black bricks. Something like this, and I'm assuming that we can then use that to move this. We can, so I just held it over the bar and clicked, and then now I'm assuming I can hold it over this bar and click again. I can't. That's interesting. I wonder if I have to right-click, or maybe I can just put it back in the solidifier once the copper is done. Let's find out. If I put the ingot mold back in, that's going to turn into a copper ingot. I wonder then if I can put this back into the solidifier. I'm assuming I can. I was hoping I could put it back in here somewhere. Even putting it in the melter there doesn't do it. That's fine. Can I do... Oh, and that's awkward because we got 100 millibuckets for melting the copper, but we only needed 90 to make the ingot, which means we're always left with a tiny little bit of molten copper. That is horrendous. Either way, we do now have a copper ingot, and so back in the basic Technium quest line, we can now look at progressing forward here. So there is a quest to get a rod mold, which looks fairly straightforward. Any old rod with 4 black brick. We can then use that, of course, to do the exact same thing that we just did with the molten copper to get the ingot, but instead we'll do it to get the rod. And I'm assuming, again, it's the exact same deal to get the gear. We just need 4 ingots worth of copper, 360 millibuckets, to get 1 copper gear. And so we are going to need to process a lot more cobblestone. And as I mentioned a second ago, I think what we'll do here, we'll go ahead, we'll move the rock washer over to here. I want to extract from the logistical transporter into the rock washer, like so. Make sure that is set to extract. That's going to fill this guy up. Then from there, we just need to move over our ambient water collector. Before I do that, I am going to move the water that's in it just so that we have enough water for this to actually start working. And then, of course, once it is working, we're hopefully generating the water fast enough to get a reasonable amount of copper via this rock washer. Once we've got the ambient water collector moved over, this is now just going to continue to make copper for us. We could pump these into like a chest or a barrel, but I think it's worth waiting until we can make the compactor because it's really not too far away. And then from there, we can take the raw copper and auto process that via one of these setups. One thing that I completely forgot about is the fact that we can actually make grout. I've been kind of waiting for our grout miner over here to make grout for me passively, but we have a ton of clay, which we can craft down. I love the fact that that has been added as a recipe. And we can also take, of course, sand and gravel, and we can just craft up stacks and stacks of grout, which is going to make it way easier for us to get more of this black brick, as opposed to waiting and speeding up the grout maker on the end there. Having the grout coming in passively is definitely worthwhile, but at the moment we actually need loads of this black brick to make a ton of these casting blocks, and so having the ability to make it the old-fashioned way is actually very useful. Let's make sure we keep this going with charcoal. And now we need to look at processing even more of this copper. So we need to take all of that, run that into here. I am going to take the ingot cast out for a second because, of course, we need to make ourselves the rod cast. It did show any rod. I don't know if a stick works. A stick totally does work. Nice. So we can throw that in over here, and that's going to start making us our first copper stick. The copper stick is going to be useful going forward, albeit I don't think it's going to be useful for getting the compactor, but it is a requirement, of course, for the basic Technium. To get the compactor, we need to get 2 copper gears with some compressed stone and a sturdy machine frame. So for that, let's stop you. Let's swap this out. I did put this chest down here, by the way, specifically to store all of our casts so we can easily swap out, for example, the gear mold here. We are going to need 2 copper gears, ideally, so we're going to need even more copper from our rock washer. Let's throw you in like so. I'm assuming I can also melt down the copper that I already have. I totally can. Fantastic. That is going to complete this quest right here. And that also unlocks the ability to get another tier of speed upgrade. So far, I think we've only made the first tier of fixed speed upgrade, but there is a second and third tier, which we can use to make machines like the cloche here even faster than they already are. And so now, in terms of making the compactor, we are just missing a little bit more copper. Okay, so I think we have enough copper here. I need to smelt these 2 down. In here, we do have a little bit of coal left over. The chat has told me that if you shift left click, you can dump fluids. I did make another fluid mover here because I had to take some copper out to make another set of these coal gears. But if you don't want to take the actual liquid out with one of these fluid movers, you can also just go ahead and shift left click and it will dump the fluid. I've also been told here, and I'm going to stop this temporarily, that if we make another one of these fuel tanks, which we can do with more black brick and a single glass, that we can place this next to the solidifier, like this, and we can fill that with water that we do have backing up over here to speed up the solidifier. If we hover over right here, you'll see that that water now shows up in that bottom slot, and supposedly that speeds up the solidifying of the molten liquid into the final output, and it solidifies it quite a bit, actually. It does use the water up. It used 125 milliwickets there, but it made the copper gear way faster. Back over here, now that we have those coal gears, we can make another sturdy machine frame, and with that sturdy machine frame, we can now make our compactor just as soon as we get enough compressed stone. Thankfully, of course, our cobblestone is backing up over here, and despite the fact, whoops, that we're using it for both the rock washer and the cobblestone melter, we are still passively backing up on even more cobblestone. I did accidentally collect lava in the ceramic bucket here. That is not a massive problem, but it does mean that when I get rid of that lava out of the bucket, I believe, will break, so we are going to have to make a new bucket going forward. For now, though, we can go ahead and make 6 more compressed cobblestone and get our compactor. The compactor does have a couple of different uses here. I'm going to put the compactor down potentially right about here for now, and we're going to extract from this rock washer into the compactor so that we can then do something like this to auto-compact the copper ore pieces into raw copper. But looking at the quest book, we can also use it to turn industrial hemp fiber into tough fabric. Normally you can do that with crafting, but it looks like that has been tweaked in this pack to require the compactor. Industrial hemp fiber is something we get by growing these industrial hemp seeds. We could grow these kind of the old-fashioned way, but I'm assuming that the intended way to make these is using another cloche, so we can automate the production of that hemp. Of course, for that, we just need even more smooth stone, which we are going to have to create some more of. Again, thankfully, not really a huge problem if we do something like this. And like this, we can take all of that black brick that we now have, thanks to the extra grout that we made earlier, and we can hopefully very quickly get the 6 smooth stone that we need to make one more cloche. Boom and boom. And then for now, I'm going to put this down over here, but we probably will also end up moving this very shortly into wherever we end up automating the production of leather, or at least this kind of fake leather that we're going to have to use to start with, because of course right now we don't really have access to cows or anything. And so this is going to make for us the industrial hemp. The industrial hemp can then be run through a compactor to make the tough fabric, and then we can use the tough fabric in another compactor to make this ersatz leather, which we're then going to use, you guessed it, in the production of basic technium. Of course, that is going to require a few more compactors than what we currently have, and so for now, over here, we're going to take this one compactor, do something like this, and like this, to automatically produce the raw copper. Now, moving on in the quest here, there is a quest for the basic technium machine that is going to require even more copper gears. It also looks like it wants me to have the basic technium placer, which is interesting here, because it looks like, unlike before where we could kind of choose not to get the technium placer, it looks like this quest is a requirement, so we do have to purchase the technium placer before we unlock the quest that allows us to actually make it, which is interesting. But to make it here, we just need 2 more copper gears, more smooth stone, and another sturdy machine frame. And this, if we look in JEI, is another large multi-block structure that is going to have to go down somewhere, that we then feed all of the resources required to make the basic technium. So we have to feed all these items into it to make that technium happen. Thankfully, at this point in time, we should be able to at least manually make some basic technium. We can get the copper rods, we can get the black bricks, the stone gears, the mini coal's a bit finicky, but we can make it happen. The copper ingots we can get. Flint we've yet to get, I think. The treated wood we have. The leather we're slowly working on with the hemp, and the glass we also have. So as far as flint is concerned, that's actually all the way at the top here. This is made by rock washing some gravel. And so I guess whilst we wait for more of this raw copper to come in, that copper can of course be smelted in here to get us another copper gear. Whilst we wait for those copper gears to come in though, I am going to go ahead and get another rock washer and probably another ambient water collector and set that up over here next to the gravel to automatically produce flint. Alright, so not too long later, we now have 2 more copper gears. That is enough for us to finally make the basic technium machine, which does complete the next quest. Whilst we were waiting for that copper to come in, over here I did throw down the extra rock washer, which is now receiving the gravel automatically, and the extra ambient water collector, which is sending the water up automatically to generate this flint automatically. Nice. So we'll come back to that when we need it for the Technium machine. Speaking of which, now, using the Technium placer, if we hover over it and press Alt, it tells us exactly what we need to generate the multi-block structure for the Technium machine. And because we have the placer, I believe all we have to do is place down the Technium machine. And then if we have all of these resources in our inventory, I believe we can just shift right click on the Technium machine and it will place all those items down and build the multi-block structure for us. So, getting the wooden scaffolding fairly straightforward, it's just a ton of wood. Getting the stone bricks, also fairly easy. Black bricks, also super easy. Treated wooden planks, not too bad. And then we need an engineer's crafting table. So in here, let me put some more wood in there to get us more treated wooden planks. I have been periodically taking the charcoal out of here and using that for the coal gears and for our fuel over here, because we do keep running out of fuel because we're smelting up a tremendous amount of smooth stone for all of the gears. But the engineer's crafting table here is thankfully fairly straightforward, actually. It's one regular crafting table with, I believe, some treated wooden sticks. It is, and some treated wooden slabs, which we can also make like so. Boom, and boom. Nice. So now it's really just a case of making a bunch more of a lot of the stuff that we've already made, and then we should be able to construct this multi-block. Alright, not too long later, we have almost all the resources. We're just missing some treated wood, which we are, of course, generating in our solidifier. And we now have all of the required items to build this multi-block structure. So I have built a little bit of an expansion to this side of our base. The multi-block here is 7 wide, 7 deep, and 6 tall. It says there's 7, 6, 7. That's X, Y, and Z coordinates. So I built a platform that's slightly wider to leave a bit of space around the edge. Once you have the basic Technium machine down, in JEI, you can click on the basic Technium ingot, and you can click on this button right here to visualize the structure. Of course, we do also have our basic Technium machine placer, and so we should just be able to shift right click onto the basic Technium machine, and look at that, it takes all of the items out of our inventory and places them down perfectly. And so now we should be able to look to making our first Technium ingot. To do that, we have to put all of these items in. Thankfully, if I'm not mistaken, I think it does say in the quest book that all of the items can only go into their specific slots. It says requires 9 different items to craft. Each slot is locked for that specific item to make automation easier. So going forward, if we end up, pumping flint into here automatically, it's not going to fill all of the slots with flint. It's only going to put that flint into the slot that can hold flint, which is quite useful. So right now, what we need to do is grab our industrial hemp. We need to run that through our compactor. Temporarily, I'll take this copper out, and I guess we probably want to get this copper into the melter over here so that can melt, and we can turn that into rods and ingots. Over here, we have some tough fabric. We can run that tough fabric through a second time to get some leather. That leather is going to go in over here. We do need at least 2 to make that happen, so we are going to have to come back to that in a second once we have more of the hemp. And then we also need more tiny coal. Thankfully, we can make a bunch of that and whack all of it into the Technium machine. What else are we missing? We're missing black bricks, which we can also make. How many black bricks do we have? We have got 51 black brick. We can craft that into 12 black bricks, which is enough to make at least 1 Technium. Of course, we are going to want to automate that going forward, and in fact, there is a super nifty recipe here with the compactor that's going to allow us to auto-craft those black bricks from our grout, which is going to be way easier than what we've been doing up until now. From there, we also need some stone gears, which we actually do have in our inventory, and then finally, it is just a copper ingot, and then of course more of that leather. So let's do one of these. That's going to very quickly get us the 1 copper ingot that we need. I'm a little hesitant on making too many more of those just yet. So now we actually just need 1 more leather and we are going to be good to go. So how are we doing on hemp here? It is coming in just really, really slowly. I do think that what we might be able to do here is grab the hoe we made previously and grab some of the excessive amount of bone meal that we got at the start of the pack, and I think there's a decent chance that we should be able to kind of accelerate this to get some hemp a little bit faster. With the industrial hemp here, you can just break the top block to continually harvest it. If you break the bottom block, you do then have to replant it, which does work, but it's just a bit more tedious, and you have to use even more bone meal to get the industrial hemp. So definitely recommend just using the top block there. That gets us a ton of industrial hemp fiber. It gets us it way faster than we get it in here, because you only get 2 at a time, and it takes 1,200 ticks. And so now we can once again run back over, place all of that into here, and once we have enough tough fabric, we can run that through again as well. Boom and boom. And that is going to get us the extra leather that we need in order to make, finally, our first Technium. Just as soon as we get 4 copper rods. Which thankfully, as it turns out, we have enough copper to do. Nice. Boom. And any second now. And boom. Basic Technium. Nice. So now that we have that, we do kind of need to automate the production of that basic Technium, because it's going to be needed going forward, not only to complete the research in the basic research tree, unlocking things like storage drawers for us, which is going to make our lives a whole heck of a lot easier, and things like this crafter here as well, but it is also required, I believe, in the making of advanced Technium, or at least that's usually how this works. And yes, this pack is no different. The advanced Technium does require the basic Technium, and then the next tier of Technium also requires the advanced Technium, that being elite, and so on and so forth as we move forward in the pack. So we do really want to automate all of the subcomponents here, some of which we've already kind of started to automate, some of which, like the flint, we have already fully automated, but we need to automate all of these to keep that Technium coming in. Down here, though, we do now have the basic Technium nuggets, and there is also a basic Technium machine frame here, which we can use for the researcher. So the basic Technium machine frame, thankfully, doesn't look too expensive. We need a copper gear, which we should be able to do because we have some extra copper in our inventory. Let me do something like this, and we probably also have some more copper over in here as well. We totally do. This is still working, albeit somewhat slowly, and we are also actually in need of lava again in our fuel slot. So let's do a quick one of those. As mentioned, that does destroy the bucket, but that's fine. We've got unlimited clay. We can very easily make more of those buckets, and we are also going to require an extra 8 charcoal in here as well to get those 2 extra coal gears as well. So we'll throw those in over here. This is done. We can stop you because we don't want to have to pull out too many fluids here. I am not going to delete that copper because I feel like it's kind of a precious resource. Instead, I'm going to put it back in like that, and we can throw this copper in for use in the future. Back over here, do we have what it takes to make a basic Technium machine frame? We do. And from there, do we have what it takes to make the researcher? We also do. Nice. And so now I am kind of hopeful that this is just a block that works on its own. It looks like that is the case. It does look like this might require energy, but let me check the quest book here. So right here, we do need to make basic research. It looks like the basic research doesn't require any energy. All we have to do is put a basic Technium nugget into the researcher, and that is going to turn that into a basic research. Then, for example, if we wanted to unlock storage drawers, we would have to get 32 of those basic researchers along with 32 regular chests. So 32 nuggets of basic Technium, or essentially 4 ingots worth to unlock that research. So quite a bit more than what we have right now. And so I guess we do really want to look at automating some of this stuff. Okay, so I've taken a look at what we might need to do here to automate all of these resources. None of them seem too difficult. However, we are going to need, to begin with, quite a few more of these compactors, because we need a compactor to make the leather. We actually need 2 compactors, one to turn the hemp into fabric, and then another to turn the fabric into leather. We also, I think, are going to want at least one more compactor for the copper here, because right now we have just the one rock washer going into the one compactor, and then that makes raw copper. We need to split our raw copper, and I did just do a quick test here to see how the pipes work, but unfortunately, the pipes, at least without any kind of modification, don't split the items that come out of the chest. So if I set this to extract, also by the way here, you can shift and scroll with the wrench to change its mode. We want to set it to items, so we can extract. If I were to put some wood in here, all of the items will go to the same chest. It doesn't split the items nicely, unfortunately. And so what I think we're going to do is we're going to get a second one of these compactors so that we can have one compactor making raw copper that we're going to smelt into ingots, and another that makes raw copper that we're going to smelt into rods. Over here, you can also shift scroll into wrench mode, and then wrench mode allows you to pick up these pipes very easily. I've also been told, though, that if we leave this in item mode, you can do the same with the engineer's hammer without having to scroll through the menus as well. So that does make it just a little easier to move those pipes. For now, let me dump these out of the way. We do have all of the sturdy machine frames here to make 4 more compactors. So all I need to do is get a bunch more cobblestone out of here. We need to compress that cobblestone up like so, and then we can use that to make our second compactor. I do also think it is almost certainly going to be in our best interest here to make at least one, if not multiple more rock washers to allow us to produce these copper pieces way faster than we're currently making them. Over here, I also do want to get another compactor, of course, for the grout, because that's going to make it even easier for us to get these black bricks, which we're going to need because I think we're going to have to set up multiple of these. We're going to need a lot more of these fuel tanks, controllers, and solidifiers, because I think we want to have one dedicated to making copper ingots, one dedicated to making the copper rods, and then we also need, ideally, I think, one dedicated to making stone gears, because the way that we automate these without any kind of auto crafting is we have the stone going automatically to the controller, and then we just have that go into a stone gear via the solidifier. The same is true for the glass as well. We could try and set up some automation with a furnace by having the fuel that comes out of here going straight round into one of our furnaces, but I do think that it's probably going to be easier, again, just to use the block mold and molten glass. We can melt the sand that we have directly into molten glass and then use the block mold to automatically make the glass and send it around to here. To do that, of course, we need way more compactors, and the compactors do require 8 copper per compactor, which is definitely our limiting factor at the moment. And so what I think I'm also going to do is, like I said, make multiple more of these rock washers so that we can get those copper ingots coming in way faster to make even more of these compactors. Right here, I've put down the second rock washer. I do want to disconnect these. So with the wrench, we're just going to shift right click on this, shift right click again, and shift right click a third time, and that disconnects those pipes. Now we can set this to extract, and that's going to produce extra for us just as soon as we get the cobblestone connected. So with the location of this rock washer, it's going to make more sense for us to extract out the middle. And to be fair, I think we can probably do something like this and set that to extract like that. It's not the fastest thing in the world. It's going to wait until this first one fills up before it sends cobblestone to the second one, but so long as we have cobblestone coming in faster than we're using it, and so long as this rock washer uses cobblestone slower than the pipes can send it, which it looks like it is doing, this should all slowly back up. The same is true for the cobblestone melter as well. It will send it here before it sends it here, but that is now working, and we should be making copper twice as fast. Alright, so not too long later, we've got another compactor down, this one doing really good work because it's making these black bricks automatically. Of course, we do want to pipe those around into here because that is one of the recipes that we need, but it's also necessary, of course, over here for the creation of an extra controller and also for an extra solidifier, which we're also going to need. So let me make one of those. Let me also clear a little bit of inventory space here because we're holding a lot of stuff. I might also need some more of these black ingots as well because I think we're also going to want to get another fuel tank. And so let me quickly grab some of, well, the grout's all been used now, so I guess we're doing it the old-fashioned way again. We're going to grab some sand, some gravel, and some clay, and we're going to craft that up into more grout, which we can then smelt, of course, in our blast furnace once again. Boom, and boom. We'll take that glass and move it out for now. Then over here, what I'm thinking of doing is I'm thinking of taking the current setup that we have and moving it over to here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my solidifiers down at the bottom. So I'm going to put them down, let's say here, and then we'll build the controller on top of that with the tank on the top. We'll probably end up moving a lot of this because a lot of this is kind of going down a bit haphazardly at the moment, but the plan then is to have our second solidifier, let's say here, with a controller in the middle, and another tank on top. I guess for now we could take this tank right here, although it's probably going to be better if we make a fresh tank, which I believe is just this. It is indeed. That tank is going to go down right about here. What we're going to do here is we're going to take our fluid pipes and we're going to extract the lava from this cobblestone melter round into these melters here. So we're going to do something like this, and of course set that to extract. That's going to fill these with lava. Then what we want to do is we want to send this is where it gets tricky because we've kind of put these down in a very awkward position, but I want to send, and it's going to get so spaghetti and awkward, but I want to send the raw copper from here into these two controllers. And then at the bottom, we're going to have one of these making copper ingots and the other making copper rods. So say copper ingots here and copper rods there. And then with this, we can then extract from the bottom of these round into our Technium machine, and that should just automatically make the copper ingots and the copper rods. To do that, we are going to need more of these logistical pipes. For that, we need more real bricks, which we do not have. Thankfully, we have a lot of furnaces, and so what we should be able to do is just take a ton of clay here, craft that into clay balls, smelt those up, and once we have some bricks, we can hopefully start running these cables over. And like I say, it's going to be a little awkward because I've put these in a bit of an awkward position, although we might be able to rekajigger some of this to make it nicer. For example, if we put the water collector on the top, I think that's going to make life way easier. So if we do this, don't do that. Whoops, have I just put lava in there? No, I haven't. Good. We'll do that, and we'll put this like here for now. Set that to extract, which again we do need to do with the other wrench, not with the hammer. Like so. That is then going to free up space down here for us to do something like this. We're going to extract from here, like this. It doesn't really matter too much if you color coordinate the pipe, at least not just yet. That is useful in the future for specifying like where you want certain items to go. For now, though, you can just cycle through. If you do shift right-click, you can change the color. Like I said, they're not strictly necessary. Right here, I'm also going to go ahead and disconnect you and disconnect you, like that. And we're going to run this. Not there. There's quite a few pipe disconnects that need to happen here. But we're going to disconnect this pipe, and we're going to run this round into the other controller. Once we have those extra basic logistical transporters, we can put those down, let's say here and here, again, making sure that we disconnect wherever we don't want the copper to go. And then back over here, if we do finally set that to extract, like so, we should see copper in both of these, we do. Nice. So this one's going to make the copper rods. This one's going to make the copper ingots. So now both of those are automated. We've automated the copper rods. We've automated the copper ingots. We've automated the flint. We've automated the black bricks. We have automated the treated wood. The only things left to automate are the leather, the stone gears, the mini coal, and the glass. And the thing is that I think all of those, apart from the leather, are going to require more of these. We want one of these for cobblestone. So we're going to take the cobblestone from here, put that into another melter, which I might just put in the middle, actually, of these melters. That might work. Also, I do need to put another fluid pipe down there because I seem to have broken the one that was connected up for this guy. That is potentially fine. I'm a little worried about that connecting over here. I did have to break and replace all of those pipes to get these back down. I had to make sure that wasn't set to extracting so that this would work again. But essentially, I'm going to go ahead and set up at the very least 3 more of these so that we can get the stone gears, the mini coal, and the glass going. Alright, so quite a few more controllers and solidifiers later. So we have the 2 that we set up previously, and then what I've done is between those, and on either side I guess, I've put down 3 more controllers. It turns out these controllers can share the fuel tank, so 2 fuel tanks here can provide for all of these controllers, and then on top of that we've got solidifiers beneath them all. So, the way this is working is the center one is receiving cobblestone from that center cobblestone line that was giving cobblestone to everything else. So cobblestone is being put in here, that is then getting pushed down to the solidifier, and that is then being used with the gear cast to get us stone gears. Over here, we of course have the copper ingots. Here we have the copper rods. Over here, what we're going to do is we're going to extract the charcoal from this guy, like so. That's going to melt the charcoal into liquefied coal, which is then going to get turned down here into coal nuggets. For that, we do need to get the nugget cast, which is, or the nugget mold, I should say. This one right here. That, thankfully, doesn't look too difficult. We just need a nugget with 4 of these black bricks. Nice. And then if we put that in right about here, that's going to make the coal nuggets, which we need for the Technium. So that's the stone gears taken care of, the black bricks taken care of, the copper rods taken care of, the flint, the copper ingots, the mini coal, the treated wood. All we have left is the leather and the glass. Over here, I've moved the cloche that makes the hemp fibers. Again, right now we just have one. We're almost certainly going to have to make more of these, but just to get the automation going, that is then pumping around into a first compactor that turns the fiber into tough fabric, and then we have another one here with another pipe that turns the tough fabric into leather. We can then just pipe that round into here. So that is the leather complete. Finally, this last solidifier and controller is for making glass. And what I am going to do here, I am going to grab a stone hammer. I'm going to move the current setup that we have, because right now we've got stone being made here, but what we need to pipe into this controller here is, of course, sand. We could run a logistical transporter from here kind of all the way along to here, but I think it's going to make way more sense if instead I just go ahead and kind of excavate the sand, which would have been easier if my excavator had more durability, but we can go ahead and just move this sand over to here. And if we swap the sand and stone around, then all we have to do is take our logistical transporter, extract from here into here, making sure, of course, that we only have sand in here and not stone. That's then going to put sand into the controller, and that's going to go into the block mold solidifier, making glass. And I think finally, at that point, that is technically all of those resources at least somewhat automated. The final piece of the puzzle would just be getting all of those resources round into the actual Technium maker, which shouldn't be too difficult. It should really just be a case of getting a bunch of logistical transporters, putting them on the bottom of all of these solidifiers so we can set them all to extract, putting it on the bottom of this solidifier to extract, on the bottom of this compactor to extract, and then just piping everything round. I think I'm going to do it to the underside of the Technium, so I think what I'll do is I'll kind of break the block underneath here, and then if we build a little platform underneath, we should be able to then run pipes under the platform to the bottom of this basic Technium machine, and everything should just kind of make its way there. The difficult part is this guy. We're going to have to run quite a long cable around to there. I guess if we really wanted to, we could also swap gravel with grout, which I might do, to be fair. That's going to put grout, although we also need flint, actually, so I could swap grout with stone. I could put the grout here, and that makes it a little bit shorter of a distance to pipe, which I think is going to be worth it, because while the pipes are not crazy expensive, they're also not particularly cheap either. So it's definitely worth, I think, moving these closer where necessary. Let me quickly do this and this. Fantastic. And then let's see if we can't, like, somewhat awkwardly move all of the stone over to here and all of the sand back over to here. And then I'm also going to go and quickly move that. Actually, there's no point in doing this because I'm going to put the grout there. So let's put the stone in here, in fact, and let's move that grout over. All right, so this has been moved over and is once again making the black bricks. And so, yeah, I think that's all basically ready to go. Right now, I don't have enough basic logistical transporters to actually run the pipe over here. But if we do a little bit of kind of manual harvesting here, we should have enough of all of these to make at least one more of these Technium ingots. I think we've got quite a few of the stone gears. We do indeed. Having those available is also just going to be nice in general going forward. It's going to make life a fair bit easier. But next time we'll come back and we'll look at maybe tidying this up a little bit, but also, you know, running that cable underground so we can get everything around to the basic Technium. Between streams, I might look at making like more of these cloches so that we have those ready to go. I might even look at kind of setting up a little bit of another extension to the platform so we can have, you know, a little row of cloches that then feed down into these compactors here. There is also the potential that we might run into an issue with this because right now it is making both hemp and seeds. We could put in the no seed upgrade that would get rid of the seeds, like it wouldn't make any extra seeds, which I think could be quite useful. It really depends on whether or not these hemp seeds end up clogging this up. Again, that is something I guess we'll find out in the future, but I think in theory now we do have automation set up for all of the items required to make basic Technium, and we can of course take that basic Technium, craft it down into nuggets, and if we place those nuggets into our researcher, we begin to get the basic research, which we can use to start to unlock new stuff going forward. And yeah, next time we'll come back, like I said, we'll get this all automated up and running, and then we'll look at starting on the advanced quest line, which is going to give us some extra resources, and we're going to, I guess, begin our journey towards automating the production of advanced Technium. But for now, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Techopolis 3 there.